Hi, this is Marcy. Whether you're a food safety professional or simply interested in food safety for your home, AAA Food Handler Training School welcomes your questions. We invite you to visit www.aaafoodhandler.com, where you'll find our Frequently Asked Questions page, which lists answers to some of the most often asked questions. Or call us toll-free at 1-877-222-3487. Our classroom-style video courses for food safety managers provide over 5.5 hours of training to prepare you for your ANSI-approved and nationally accepted food manager certification exam. And now, here's a segment on proper food storage from one of our courses. In this section of the course, Sung will discuss food storage, which will, for the most part, be about walk-in refrigerators and freezers and how you place items in them. He'll talk about appropriate lids and how you locate items in relation to other items. He'll explain the policy of FIFO, first in, first out, and labeling. He'll talk about which items to place closer to the refrigerator door and why, and he'll explain the 7-day rule and exceptions to it.
For now, I want to turn to how do we store foods properly in refrigerators and walk-in freezers. So if you look at this photo over here, in this first photo we see some trays of different ready-to-eat foods stacked on top of each other on a shelf inside what looks to be a walk-in refrigerator. What's wrong with this photo, first of all? Well, the shelves are filthy. Secondly, the trays are stacked directly on top of each other with the bottom of the tray touching the food that's ready to eat. And we don't know where that bottom of the tray has been laid on, so it's introducing all types of contaminants. Secondly, we see in this photo that just below that tray is another tray that has some tin foil covering it. Tin foil and plastic wraps are not allowed as proper coverage methods for storing of foods. They may protect from dust falling, however, they're too flimsy, they tear too easily, and if you put anything on top of it, it'll just sink right in, and integrity will be compromised, and then you'll have cross-contamination going on, which is why we're always required to use very solid, nice-fitting, tight-fitting lids for all our products. Okay? Let's look at the next picture. Now, in this next photo, what we see is a whole celery stacked on top of what looks like to be a pork butt or pork shoulder, uncooked, raw. What is wrong with that situation? Well, that one is more obvious, isn't it? The celery is just ready to eat vegetable. All it's going to get at best is some washing, then it's going to get cut and go right to the customer most likely. The hunk of meat, that's got all kind of contaminant potential, so that is definitely cross-contamination. So in order to help us protect against this, there are a lot of things in our industry. We have to practice, first of all, FIFO, first in, first out. We should label everything. And when we do label everything, we also need to be aware of how to put these things away. And before I get into this question that I'm going to talk about, I want to address something else. For example, when you have refrigerators and freezers, and refrigerators and freezers, we have different types. We have the reach-in type, but we also have the walk-in type. And I would recommend, whenever possible, get the largest walk-in refrigerator and freezer your facility is able to handle that you can afford. And the reason for that is, in the long run, it's going to make your life a lot easier. Now, when you're installing the walk-in refrigerator, be mindful of where the door is going to go. And you know that depends on the size of your area where you're going, but you also want to keep in mind how you're going to place your storage shelves. And we know that when the door is opening, as the deliveries come in, they're going to be remaining open for a while as we get everything in there. So the temperature of the walk-in is going to go up. So it's important to put products which are going to be less affected by that increase in the temperature inside that walk-in. For example, eggs are required to be delivered at 45 degrees. not 41 or lower. So even if the fluctuation varies a few degrees, putting whole shell eggs closer to the door will be less concerning than putting raw seafood or raw beef, for example. Okay? So you'd want your meat products further back where there would be less temperature fluctuation, and you would want your fruits and vegetables closer up front, because by the most part they're less affected by that. And with fruits and vegetables, in most cases you don't even have to cook them, you just wash them and serve them raw. Okay? Another thing you want to keep in mind is, how am I going to store these products from top to bottom? And that's what this next question is about. And of course, we want to label everything according to FIFO, first in, first out. And as new products are made, you want to put them towards the back and bring out the older products to the front and put a first use sticker on them. All of them should be labeled with the identification name for them, when it was made, when it should be used by, and the 7-day rule. All prepared foods go by the 7-day rule.
Here's an example of the 7-day rule. A package of ready-to-eat foods such as hot dogs or bologna with an expiration date 30 days from now, if opened, is only good for 7 days from the date of opening or the expiration date, whichever is sooner.
The only items that don't go by the 7-day rule is when that item is an item that has a much further expiration date. In the example of let's say a dry salami that typically would have not a problem, or beef jerky and things like that, ultra high pasteurized products, things like that. But pretty much everything else goes under the 7-day rule. All right, so let's look at this next example. We have received these 5 different items, and we need to put it into a refrigerator. It could be a regular reach-in refrigerator. You have 5 shelves. How would you place this from top to bottom? They are raw beef, whole shell eggs, raw chicken, a tray of baked beans, and raw vegetables. So you got 5 different products. How would you place them in your refrigerator from top to bottom in order to minimize cross-contamination? Think about that for a moment. All right, have you written it down? Let's see what the correct answer is. So the order would be, on the very top, tray of baked beans. Below that, the raw vegetables. Below that, the whole shell eggs. Below that, raw beef, and then finally in the bottom, raw chicken. Now, this is the correct order in order to help minimize cross-contamination. The question is, why is this the correct order? That's really what's important to understand in order to really understand how cross-contamination works. And the answer really has to do with one key factor. Does anyone know what that is? Okay, that key factor has to do with the final cooking temperature of the product. So let's look at this. The first one, tray of baked beans. Okay, the tray of baked beans is a ready-to-eat product. Now I can reheat it to 165 degrees, but I can also serve it cold if I want to. It's ready to eat. So if I were to serve it cold, it would get 0 cooking or reheating. So it's got to go on the very top. We know that all ready-to-eat products must be maintained above uncooked products. So that one was actually easy. Next comes the vegetables. Now it says raw vegetables. That means maybe it wasn't even clean, which means it can possibly drop dirt. And that's not good, which is why, if possible, especially in a walk-in, you want to put all your fruits and vegetables on one side on a set of shelves, and then all your meats and meat products on another side. Okay, so you never have this thing happening. And then of course, when you do that, you want to put all your cut, washed fruits and vegetables on the top, and then the unwashed boxes below that. Okay? But in this situation, we don't have that, so we're thinking with the vegetables, the best they're going to do is they're going to get washed and served straight, like a lettuce or cilantro for salsa. So you definitely don't want any raw meat products above it. You don't want the egg above it, because if it was to crack, it would introduce salmonella into the vegetables. So you want to make sure that you have the vegetables above the meat products. Now, how do we know it's the whole shell eggs and not the beef or the chicken? Because the whole shell eggs get cooked to a final temperature of 145 degrees Fahrenheit. Plus, they usually come in those cartons, they're protected, they're cleaned and washed. And if you were to see any dirt from the vegetable, most likely you would rinse that away before you cracked it and used it. Okay? But they do get cooked to 145, whereas vegetables do not get cooked. And if you do cook it, they are only required to be cooked to 135. So that goes above the raw shell eggs. Then finally, below those would be the raw beef, which is 155 degrees for 15 seconds, and then finally poultry, which is 165 degrees 15 seconds. So you see, we're going always from lowest to highest cooking temperature as we work our way down. Always separate your cooked ready-to-eat foods from your uncooked uncooked products. Try to keep all your shelves so that your cooked beef go over raw beef, cooked chicken goes over raw chicken, and so forth. If you have to use the same shelf, always follow the cooking temperature order. Okay? Whenever you can separate everything, that's even better.
The closer an item is to ready-to-eat food, the higher it should be stored. For example, cooked chicken should be stored above marinating chicken, which should be stored above unopened packs of raw chicken.
Anything to help minimize cross-contamination.
The larger your walk-in refrigerator, the easier it will be to properly store foods. You would be able to store each type of meat, chicken, beef, or pork, on its own shelving unit, keeping in mind how close each item is to ready-to-eat foods. The closer an item is to ready-to-eat foods, the higher it should be placed. Ready-to-eat foods go on the top shelf, while unopened packages of raw meat go on the bottom shelf, and so forth. The reason for this order is simple. If something falls to a shelf beneath it, the higher cooking temperature of the item it fell into will eliminate the possibility of illness due to the contaminant. Remember that the 6-inch rule applies in refrigerators and freezers too. Nothing is to be stored on the floor. If space is more limited, you may have to place different types of meat on different levels of the same shelving unit. In this case, the final cooking temperature of the meat affects the storage height of the item. Items with a lower final cooking temperature are to be stored above items with a higher final cooking temperature. Again, if something falls to a shelf beneath it, the higher cooking temperature of the item it fell into will eliminate the possibility of illness due to the contaminant. The final cooking temperature also applies to non-meats. For example, packaged deli meats and cooked foods would be placed above uncooked egg whites and egg yolks, which would be placed above cases of eggs. In another example, ready-to-eat foods would be placed above washed vegetables, which would be placed above raw, unwashed vegetables. Because the area near the door will get a bit warmer when the door is opened, place items that are less affected by slightly higher temperatures near the door. Eggs and vegetables are good examples of items to place near the door. These same guidelines apply to organizing items in walk-in freezers to minimize problems in case of dripping due to a power outage. AAA Food Handler Training School offers programs for basic food handlers, certified professional food safety managers, convenience store food safety managers, grocery store food safety managers, as well as certified food safety HACCP managers, which prepare you to take and pass ANSI-approved exams from the National Registry of Food Safety Professionals, ServSafe, and Prometric. By working with over 2,500 testing centers throughout the United States, we can easily schedule your exam at a date and time that is convenient to you. Also, please visit our website, www.aaafoodhandler.com, for interesting newsletters, articles, and products regarding the food service industry.